Welcome back to KTN News Desk. We're discussing the way forward for the opposition coalition NASA in the wake of the Supreme Court decision to uphold President Uhuru Kenyatta's victory. Preparations are already underway at the Kasarani Stadium for the swearing-in of President Uhuru Kenyatta on Tuesday next week. Well, for more on this conversation, I'm joined here in studio by Professor Oeri Tumbo, but also joining us from our City Center studios is a lawyer and a political analyst, Joy Brenda Mdivo. I'd like to begin with you, Joy, just borrowing from where Professor Oeri Tumbo left off. He speaks of mutual respect, as lacking between the opposition and the national government, especially between the politicians. Do you think breeding that mutual respect would be a good position to begin the process of reconciliation and inclusion in the country?
Yes, but let me add a third arm to what he said. He talked about mutual respect between the government and the opposition, but there's also need to be, for there to be respect for the citizens of this country. And that's why I keep insisting, whenever our leaders are making decisions, they need to be mindful of the fact that they're making decisions on behalf of people who elected them. For example, now that we have the swearing in coming in, the president has got no excuse at all to not make it his first priority to have some form of conversation about cohesion, forgiveness, and national healing, and sort of we can't eradicate differences because that's the basis of democracies. We are different, hence everybody needs to have a say, and those who carry the day form the government. But even in our differences, to find a way of building nationhood, and that is something I would expect the president to make a top priority. Another thing I would like to see that the good professor said is also for the opposition to recognize that they have a very important role to play in government as the opposition. And that's a role that only they can play. We saw what happened when the government was pushing through the election reform, the election amendment bill. Because there's no opposition, then the discussion is not robust. What would have been a critical voice was not heard, because the opposition decided to stay away. At the end of the day, the person who loses is the electorate who sent these people to parliament and asked them, please go and look at what is going on my behalf. The other thing I would like to see also is not just respect in terms of cordiality between our leaders, but them actively encouraging each of their supporters to extend the same cordiality on the ground. We've had it said before, behind closed doors, we are very good friends, we have tea together, our children go to the same schools. So this enmity is just is just superficial. That's amongst the politicians. But that doesn't communicate and translate to their supporters. So what happens? The enmity becomes real. And that is what we are seeing in the country right now. You talked about the country being divided down the middle. In my opinion, the division is imaginary. If people are told, look, you have more together than you have apart, and they actually had a chance to interrogate that properly, you'd see some of this animosity healing and coming together. There's something Professor said, that a politician without people is nothing. And they need people so that they are politicians. And I agree with that. That is exactly true. And that is the reason why you need to be more careful with how you handle people. Because at the end of the day, it is lives. The parents of Baby Pendo have lost her forever. It's very unfortunate that it is something that we can very easily forget. But at the end of the day, their lives are changed forever. There are people nursing broken limbs, broken homes. There are people whose marriages have dissolved over this. We need to come to a place where we understand respect for the people has to be paramount with each of our leaders, to understand that they're not leading us for the sake of anything. They're actually leading us on God's behalf. We are God's people. And at the end of the day, that's why you find mnyonge akiona hana haki, they start turning to prayers and to things like that, because there are times only a higher power, higher than the president, can bring justice to a country. And that is where I would urge Kenyans to go. Don't look at men to bring you solutions. Let's transcend higher and let us be the change we want to see.
All right, and that's a good place to close it, Joy. Kenyans seeking a higher power. Let's listen in to Professor Oeri Tumbo here. Joy says, we need to look away from our politicians. We need to look away from our leaders, even as we're trying to solve this. What would you like to see before the swearing in of President Uhuru Kenyatta, before he assumes the instruments of power in terms of reconciling the nation?
Even when there is a very strongly contested football match, when there is a very strongly contested rugby match, very strongly contested wrestling match, the competitors, win and the loser, usually shake hands and say, next time, I think I'll deal with you in a different way.
Right.
In this particular way, in this particular situation, rather, I would like to see the president as the winner exercising magnanimity. In other words, of saying, look, whether we argue for another 10 years, the truth is our citizens expect service delivery in a clean, stable, tidy, and peaceful environment. For the sake of those people, all right? Even if you have very hard feelings, I would like to make the following concession. I know my supporters will not be very happy, but I'm making it because I have greater responsibility than all those supporters together. With this, and I would like you also to plead your supporters that you submit and stay out of this, or you leave pursuing this particular harmful program. Now, that means that the president needs to stop listening to those busybodies and focus on national welfare and provide, or rather extend an olive branch to the opposition for purposes of making our people peaceful. Now, that is where it ends. But there is an element that it drives the opposition, structural injustice.
Right.
That's really what drives. He needs to start examining elements of structural and historical injustices. In other words, when you are saying, let us go to court, let us go to church, as long as those structural injustices are still in place and unattended, it's
The
very,
same
very
problem
difficult.
remains.
Same problem remains.
All right, so then we will wait, of course, and keep an eye on the situation in the country. Many thanks for speaking to us. That is a political analyst, Professor Oeri Tumbo, and joining us from our City Center studios is lawyer and political analyst Joy Brendam Diva. Thank you both for being part of this conversation. This is KTN News Desk. The show isn't over yet. Let's now take a look at us making headlines in the world of sports with Robinson.